Among the many remnants of British colonialism in India are the decades of injustice served to the indigenous communities inhabiting forest land. In a bid to increase government control over forests and its resources, the Indian Forest Act of 1865 was enacted, which divided the forest area into three main categories: reserved, protected, and village. Reserved and protected forests were restricted to government use, and any forest declared reserved came under their jurisdiction. This led to the eviction of forest-dwelling communities and allowed the extraction of revenue and tax on private property. It wasn't until the 1970s that there began an effort to improve forest cover, when the Wildlife Protection Act and Forest Conservation Act were passed, both of which gave the authority of forests to the government. In an attempt to undo this authority, in 2006, a major legislative step was taken when the Forest Rights Act was enacted. It was meant to undo the historic injustices delivered to the indigenous communities. While the act has been met with praise and approval, its implementation in the often neglected northeastern states of India has not been consistent. What is the FRA and how does it affect the Northeast? If implemented, how does it come into effect? And more importantly, what are the complexities while executing it on the ground? Let's try and find out. The Forest Rights Act of 2006 aims to protect the interests of communities dependent on forest land for bona fide livelihood by granting them legal ownership, whether it be reserved, protected, or unclassified. The rights to forest lands goes to two types of forest-dependent communities. One, scheduled tribes, and secondly, other traditional forest dwellers who have been living in or dependent on forest land for at least 75 years or 3 generations. FRA allows either individuals to file for individual forest right claims for an individual's right of living in forest land or cultivating, or communities to claim rights for forest and its produce that is of common use under community forest rights. Upon ascertaining of rights under FRA, the communities become the legal owner of the forests. FRA confers 13 types of forest rights, which includes using the land for inhabitation, self-cultivation, collection and selling of minor forest produce, and protection and conservation. The Gram Sabha is conferred with the responsibility of initiating a process for claiming of rights, after which it moves for approval by Taluka and district level committees. Additionally, FRA lets the communities through the Gram Sabha decide the kind of development they would like to see in their area. It does this by letting the Gram Sabha pass resolutions over development projects such as roads, hospitals, schools, as long as it doesn't require cutting more than 75 trees per hectare. Before the FRA, this required a long clearance process from the central government. Yet, in one of the most ecologically diverse regions in the world, the FRA has gained very little attention. Northeastern India comprises 8 states that are often clubbed together as a single region of the country. Assam, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Tripura, Manipur and Nagaland alone contribute to 1/4 of India's forest cover and are home to around 200 indigenous communities. These communities are not only dependent on forest lands for livelihoods but also socio-cultural practices. The Khasi and Jaintia tribes from Meghalaya would preserve sacred groves on the grounds of religious beliefs. Chiefs would distribute land systematically for shifting cultivation. For a region as forest-rich as the Northeast, why hasn't the FRA made leaps and bounds? Let us look at the responses from the state governments. Firstly, although the Northeast was largely neglected administratively by the British, it was not free from their exploitation. Assam garnered British interest due to its luscious tea plantations and its reserves of coal and oil. As a result, forests were cleared in Assam for the advent of railways, which would aid the transportation of raw materials. The FRA would ideally return forest land to its rightful owners and secure the ownership that was undone by the British. To preface, the Constitution of India gives the northeastern states special rights that aim at protecting their social and cultural diversity. As a result, Article 371A and 371G give the state assemblies of Nagaland and Mizoram the power to review or approve any central legislation. Consequently, both states have used the special powers granted to them to revoke the Forest Rights Act. Nagaland's government stated that the act would be irrelevant to their region, as their forests already came under individual and community ownership. Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur and Meghalaya cited similar reasons, stating that indigenous communities had rights to forest land in their state. Sikkim claimed that its scheduled tribes do not depend on a forest livelihood and there are no traditional forest dwellers in the region. Mizoram had initially approved the act in 2009 but soon after used Section 371G to revoke it. Assam and Tripura have implemented the act and are the only two states in the northeast to do so. It is thought that forest departments and autonomous district councils may be limiting the amount of forest land handed over in order to retain control. According to data by Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Assam has received almost 1.5 lakh individual forest claims, but up till January 2020, it had recognized only 57,000 of these. Of about 6,000 community forest rights claims received, Assam has only recognized about 1,000. Tripura has legally recognized about 63% of over 2 lakh IFR claims and 19% of the 277 CFR claims. One of the reasons for a low rate of rights recognition in these two states could be in hopes of exercising state control over unclassified lands. In the northeast, a large chunk of forest is unclassified, while the rest is either protected or reserved. This forest area would be beneficial for construction, which fits well with the future in land development. In Arunachal Pradesh, tensions between indigenous communities and Bangladeshi immigrants may also be hampering the implementation of FRA, where although both are dependent on the forests, the Bangladeshi immigrant would not be able to get legal claims because of the lack of citizenship to the country. Another issue is the lack of documentation of land records. The Act requires proof of inhabitation or dependency. Whether a scheduled tribe or an other traditional forest dweller, the Act requires to prove inhabitation and dependency before 13 December 2005. For other traditional forest dwellers, an additional proof for living here for at least 75 years can also be an obstacle in the absence of land records to prove the same. The lack of awareness of the Act also poses a challenge. While many communities are not aware of the Act, in Tripura, many including government officials believe that it is a land distribution act and not an act that ascertains rights. While many communities have been evicted in light of conserving flora and fauna, it is important to note the efforts of Angami tribe in Nagaland, who have shouldered the responsibility of protecting their land. It would be beneficial for these indigenous people to be legal owners of these lands that they have been conserving so that this trend can continue. However, to unlock the full potential of FRA in this region, perhaps a more local and region-specific outlook could be useful with support from the state government. The government also needs to accelerate the awareness of the Act in the region. The Act has the scope to protect the rights of the communities with a narrower approach to its region, its needs, and diversity. What do you think about the implementation of the FRA in the Northeast? Is there something else that can be added to the conversation? Let us know your thoughts in the comment box down below. You can follow us on our social media handles and our website for more such stories. Stay safe, see you next time.